This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Hannah Ipses, and I will be your host for today. We'll give it a couple of minutes until we make sure everybody joins. We're very happy to have you here with us. Let's give it a couple of minutes just to make sure everybody is joining us before I can introduce myself, and then we'll get in to our session. We're very excited. We're going to have a great session today on a webinar. I hope you're going to enjoy it. I see a lot of people are joining, so just give it a couple of minutes. From wherever you are, I hope you're having a good day. And probably it's evening for everybody right now. I am broadcasting from Toronto, Canada, so it is morning for me. But I hope everyone had a good day. With summer, it's like here in Canada, with summer, everything is great. When there's sun and there's not cold weather and snow all the time. I know there's still some people joining us. We'll just give one more minute and then we'll give an overview of how our webinar today is going to be taking place and what we will cover. So I'm going to, hello. Starting to get some notes. Yeah, please feel free to send your notes at any time. If you have a question, you have a note, feel free to share so we can, so I can answer. If I don't answer right away, I'll keep it until we kind of break for the Q&A. All right, so let's get started. How our 1 hour webinar will be broken today. I'll just start at the very first, maybe 20 minutes or so. We'll introduce Morgan. We'll talk about the certification. I know some of you are already certified, some of you are interested in your certifications. So we will talk about our certification program, the SHRM-CP and SCP. Myself, I'm an instructor for SHRM for over 7 years with Morgan. Then the other 40 minutes, we'll deep dive into the diversity, equity, and inclusion topic, which is part of the curriculum that SHRM offers. So we'll have some demo slides as well and demo lectures so you can see and get a feel of what gets covered in our classes for your certification preparation program. Please feel free to ask any questions you would be receiving. I do believe there's the recording can be shared from Morgan. This session is recorded for your future reference. So let's get started. I'll talk about Morgan a little bit. I've been with Morgan myself. I've been with them over 7 years. It's been a great journey. Morgan, they do have great resources in terms of their programs that they offer, in terms of their network, in terms of the learning management system that Morgan offers. Unbelievable. The experts that they choose for the trainers, for sure, it's the highest quality education and learning that you get to experience. And myself, I'll also introduce myself. My name is Hannah Ipses. I'm an HR executive myself. I've had the privilege to work in several countries. I worked in Jordan for over 11 years. I was an HR director for a large group in the MENA region. And I worked in Saudi Arabia for 3 years. I taught at universities in Saudi Arabia. I worked in Kuwait as well, where I established a whole third telecom operator in Kuwait from an HR perspective. I moved to Canada 2016, and I've been here ever since. I'm an HR executive for a supply chain company. As well, I've been an instructor for Morgan for SHRM-SCP CP program for over 7 years. And I'm part of the instructor team that we do deliver the program for SHRM-SCP CP. I've studied at Iowa State University. I am a SHRM-SCP certified. And what else about me? I'm passionate about learning. I'm a student and an instructor at the same time. I never stop learning, never. And every session that we have, we get to learn from each other as much as possible. And I enjoy learning from everybody's experience as well. Let's go a little bit further deep dive into the professional certifications that Morgan offers. We do have a lot of industry specific workshops. We do focus a lot on soft skills development as well, in addition to the professional education and continuing education courses. So these are just examples of the certifications that Morgan covers, from finance and accounting to supply chain to human resources. There are several in marketing. There's several certifications that are offered, from CPA, CIA, CFA, CMA. For us, let's talk about the HR, SHRM-CP, SHRM-SCP, and SHRM, which is Advanced Certificate in Human Resources Management. It's taught in Arabic. All three programs are amazing, or actually the SHRM-CP and SCP is the same program, but you get to choose what certificates you want, which we will talk about this in details in a bit. Let's talk further, and this is our corporate network. Very, very wide network across the MENA region, across the Middle East and the GCC area. Lots and lots and lots of privilege in sharing knowledge and learning, and a lot of agencies and organizations that are part of our network at Morgan. Let's talk about SHRM-CP and SCP, and how can we at Morgan help you get prepared to gain your certification, be prepared for that. What's beautiful about SHRM-CP and SCP, if you have not been exposed to see the curriculum of the certification, it focuses on the applied learning piece, focuses on your competencies. It's a very unique model in terms of the learning that you get when you're studying SHRM. Because knowledge, the knowledge piece, we all know in HR, what is our knowledge that we can, the knowledge areas that we're talking about in HR. We can talk about learning and development. We're talking about total reward. We're talking about talent acquisition. We can talk about strategic HR planning. We're talking about organization development. These are all technical areas, knowledge areas. However, the knowledge areas that you cannot advance in your application unless you can deepen your knowledge and deepen your skill in the competency and how to apply that knowledge in the workplace. All what we get faced with as HR professionals are situations, workplace situations, and every situation is different. Every situation has uniqueness around it because it has context that you'd have to study very well. And the best way for us to know how to handle workplace situations is by advancing our competence level. And our competence level can come from practice, from learning, from the whole knowledge that we acquire as individuals that will deepen our knowledge so that when we apply it, we can apply it smoothly, and it comes in a structured way as well. And what SHRM would like us to learn, this is their SHRM competency model. It has several competencies that gets focused on: leadership and navigation, how to navigate your organization, because that's the most important thing, is how to navigate the different dynamics in your organization. You take a whole lecture about a competency or a couple of competencies together that we focus on. We talk about foundational knowledge behind that competency. For example, leadership. We explore several leadership theories and where did the behavioral science reach. And the great thing about SHRM, you advance, all the material gets advanced as the science gets advanced. The reason why, for example, I chose diversity, equity, and inclusion as a focal topic today to talk about is it is an example of the development in behavioral sciences. Unbelievable how much we're advancing in our understanding of this topic. Maybe before you take the SHRM curriculum, you'd be thinking, when you hear the word diversity, when you hear the word equity, when you hear the word inclusion, you'd be thinking one way. And after you look at the science behind it, it shapes how we think. The whole idea is we want to advance in the HR profession around the world, globally. Trust me, I've worked I studied in the US and I've worked for 8 years in the United States. I worked in Canada. I worked in Saudi Arabia. I worked in Kuwait. I worked in Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, several countries. People are people everywhere. You're going to need these competencies wherever you are. It's just a difference is the cultural background and how to really understand what's beyond those external characteristics that are showing in front of you and to look beyond them. And we'll talk about that. It's a very interesting topic. Usually in our SHRM lectures, we have like 3 hours. So we get to share experiences. You can either participate in voice, or you can send your notes and tell us what you're doing in your companies. And everybody enjoys together by sharing the experiences, because usually most of the participants have good amount of experience. They're aspiring professionals that are really working on their learning and their advancements. So it's amazing to get to discuss with them different topics. The other competencies we focus on as well: relationship management, business acumen, and ethics. My favorite is business acumen. I came to a conclusion, I don't know about you, but when I'm reading SHRM, from my experience, I came to a conclusion, one of the main success factors for HR professionals is when they advance in their business knowledge. Because how can I understand my stakeholders and what they want, and how can I offer them value if I don't understand what the value they're looking for in their transaction, in their business operation? And that's what business acumen. We get to learn what are financial statements in generality. What is a balance sheet? What is a P&L? What's a cash flow statement? You feel like, oh, that's finance. For sure, it's finance. But when you're writing a job description, if you don't know what that means, the job description is not going to be impactful in the language you're using. That's why it's important as an HR professional to advance in your business acumen. The other competencies is critical evaluation, consultation, because we're advisors to the business, we consult. Very, very important. Critical evaluation, I always like to say, this is so important because I'm always suffering with the engineers of the world, the people who've got like very strong critical evaluation and analytical capabilities, and we get to learn it. And really, the more you learn the science behind it, statistical methods, what is it? How can I really analyze it and submit a business case as an HR professional? Because it's not like if I'm doing a major initiative in talent acquisition, and most of our initiatives are not quantifiable. So you have to know the tools. How can you make it convincing, your business case? Global and cultural effectiveness, communication, and HR expertise. We'll go to the next slide, which I think there's another slide that shows a little bit the details. These are how you can benefit as an organization, how you can benefit as an individual as well. When you have your certificate right next to your name, think of that. I have SHRM-CP next to my name. And of course, the certificate doesn't come out of nothing. It comes out of hard work. It comes out of our deep knowledge, deep experience, and how much you can apply that knowledge in the workplace. When you have that certificate next to your name, you are credible as an HR professional. You're providing sound business logic in front of your stakeholders. You're helping your organization apply best standards in terms of the HR recommendations. Because, we give recommendations as HR professionals. At the end, the business owner, the hiring manager, or the direct managers, they're the ones who would make the decision. So what is better than for us to come in and bring the science behind our recommendations, as well as, in addition, your knowledge would be globally applicable when you take SHRM certification, because SHRM is a global certification. And I always love the fact how it's very versatile and very adaptive. The certification always advancing. When you have it next to your name, you're truly representing the HR profession in the best way possible. This is the model. I'd like you to look at it. I benefited a lot from the SHRM body of applied skills and knowledge, BASK, we call it, the body of applied skills and knowledge, because I even like when I try to evaluate how much I'm adding value in the HR organizations that I'm working in, I look at all these and I say, am I really applying my relationship management competency in the best way possible, or can I advance further in it? I do like a self-evaluation for myself. We get to learn these. We spend, like I told you, a lecture, maybe a couple of competencies, or it could be 3, a cluster. So the first cluster is leadership. Amazing. Today, we're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is part of the leadership cluster. Interpersonal, when you're talking relationship management, communication, and global mindset. Business, you're talking business acumen, consultation, and analytical aptitude. Amazing competencies that you learn. And like you talk about, 50% of your success in your career is how much you can apply these competencies into the HR world, which is the three areas: people, workplace, organization. This is how the curriculum is broken down. People, we're talking about learning and development. When you're focusing on the individual, like learning and development, talent attraction, attract, develop, retain. That's how I like to think of people. Workplace, there are a lot of workplace issues that we need to be aware of as HR professional. CSR, we're talking about risk management, we get to cover it. Beautiful. Global effectiveness, global HR in the workplace. Amazing. Organization, this is mainly the organization development and effectiveness topics. There's also another topic in it, which is amazing, which is technology management, because it's very relevant and very, very recent. As HR professional, you need to be very, very much at a knowledge level of technology, because that's how you can enable your organization. Amazing topics that we get to cover throughout the lectures. I know the students, literally, they don't miss a lecture. They love it. They enjoy it, because these 3 hours, or 3 plus 3, we get 6 hours a week. These 6 hours are for them. They know it's for their own learning, for their own advancement. And we make the best out of these 6 hours. So 2 types of certificates, either CP or SCP. Which one is right for you? I know this is the most question that everybody has on their mind. Which one is right for me? If I'm an HR administrator or a specialist in a specific area, I haven't covered all areas, or I'm aspiring, I studied HR, I'm aspiring, most likely SHRM-CP would be the right certificate for you. If I'm an HR professional who I've been exposed to strategic HR topics, I've written policies, I've communicated policies, I've implemented policies across the workplace on an organizational level, probably SHRM-SCP would be best for you. There are some eligibility for the SCP, which is, I think, 3 years of experience you're going to have in the HR field to show that you've done work in the HR field. So the difference, the lectures are the same, but the depth of the questions that you will be asked in the exam will be different, because it's testing. So think of it, your competence level would be probably at an intermediate versus advanced. So in the SCP, it's testing whether you do have the advanced competency level in order to apply what you've learned, what knowledge you have into the workplace. That's what it's testing. But in a CP, it's testing your intermediate competency level of understanding the HR topic areas and how you can apply them in the workplace. So like we said, here, the SCP, you have work history of at least 3 years performing strategic level HR related duties. Or SHRM-CP credentials holders who have held the credential for at least 3 years. How can you maintain your active status? You can renew. I do believe it's every 3 years. You have to have 60 PDCs, professional development credits, over a 3-year period. You go on the site and you just submit either projects you've worked on and it gives you points, learning, it gives you points, certifications. There's several like categories you can submit, and then based on that, you get to, and it's not expensive when you want to renew, or you can retake the certification exam, whichever you decide, to maintain your active status. The exam, how is it broken down? It's broken down almost equally with the topics, the clusters that you saw. 17, 16 and a half, 16 and a half, 18, 18. The reason why, because we want you to be a whole-rounded HR professional, not just you're familiar with one topic very deep and another topic you're not. So we're looking at being whole-rounded. The thing I want you to focus on here is 50% of the exam is your HR specific knowledge test, which if I give you an example. What do we mean by employee turnover, for example? And there'll be multiple choice. It's all multiple choice of this and this and this and this. So you get to choose the closest one that is related to employee turnover. The other 50%, 40% is on situational judgment questions. So you'll get a case. A case is usually 3 paragraphs, 2-3 paragraphs. So-and-so in the workplace did this. You as an HR professional, you called the employee, did this, and then you consulted with the HR director. The HR director gave a decision. So they'll give you a real life situation. And then there'll be questions about that real life situation, testing your ability to apply those competencies into recommendations, HR actions and recommendations, to make sure that you do have the full understanding how not to be a discriminatory or judgmental, how to make decisions based on sound information, based on structured approach. That's why SHRM that's how you can gain the certificate next to your name. I do have a question. Is there an accredited certificate for this seminar? So this seminar, I'm giving an overview about Morgan. And then after that, the half an hour, we're giving an example of how our lectures would look like in the SHRM-CP and SCP webinar. I hope I answered the question. If you need further information, just let me know. Foundational knowledge, the 10%, that's the knowledge behind the competency. I'll give you an example. For example, if we're talking about motivation, intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, this is part of the leadership cluster competencies. So then we'll talk about a little bit of certain questions about what do we mean by internal or external, extrinsic versus intrinsic motivators. This is what we call knowledge behind the competency. So this is the exam. We're talking about 4 hours. The exam is 4 hours, computer-based, 134 questions, multiple choice questions. 80 of them are knowledge, 54 are situational judgment items. Usually the time is okay. People don't complain about the time. Like we talked about the different types of questions, the knowledge items versus the situational questions. So a few helpful tips for your studying in the exam. You need to work hard. You need to spend at least 2 hours of studying per lecture hour attended. So that's important for you to make sure that you're deepening the knowledge. You need to sacrifice those months. It's probably going to take a few months, 3-4 months, but you're going to come out of the whole journey a whole new person. Trust me on that. I know that from my students. I've been teaching for over 7 years, so I know the journey people go through and how much they love it and how much they go through. So I do have a question from a participant about the knowledge items behind the competency. Definitions in terms of just testing your level of understanding, not like a word by word definitions. You won't be asked for word by word, but at least you should know that, for example, pay is an extrinsic motivator, it's not an intrinsic motivator. Intrinsic motivator is a sense of fulfillment. So these are all multiple choice. So it's mainly, it'll give you 4 choices for you to choose from. And if you have absorbed the material, you've attended the lectures well, and you've absorbed the material, you've done a lot of practice, the answer will be the obvious. It'll be obvious, very like it's the most common sense, where internationally from a best standard, oh, this makes sense from a global perspective as well. You want to make sure that you've got a global mindset when you're answering. And we get to develop a lot. All the questions are multiple choice, correct. There will be no comprehension questions. Need to be motivated. I know no one, like literally a lot of students, almost no one misses sessions. You can view the recordings, but like almost no one misses the session because it's not the same. When you're attending live, it's beautiful. It just feels good, and everybody shares a lot of knowledge, and we're all engaged. We're all excited and engaged in the lecture. The last thing we'll talk about for SHRM is the learning management system. The learning system is very unique. It is one of the top learning systems that I have seen, and it receives so many awards. It's very easy to navigate, very advanced, unbelievable. The resources that you get an 18 months membership if you sign up for the program in the learning system. The learning system, it has so many components. I know they're here probably. Yeah, so many. So I love my favorite number 2,500 plus situational judgment and knowledge questions. So much practice. You'll do a lot of practice in our lectures as well. We do dedicate a few lectures for reviews where we actually do mock exams as well, similar to what's going to be in the exam. And we get to kind of simulate the environment for everyone, and everybody loves it because they get to experience what they're doing. And in the learning system, you also do the same. You're taking a pre-test, you're taking a post-test. A pre-test will tell you where the areas that you may need to really focus on. It just breaks it down, and there's analytics. Beautiful. There's study guide, that smart tool. There's a smart path tool that helps you through your studies. The learning system is phenomenal. Every time I go into this learning system, I enjoy navigation. The study material in the learning system, very easy to read and easy to navigate as well. And don't forget the 18 months, very, very beautiful. Flashcards, you get flashcards as well. I love the flashcard. The flashcard, you can flip it. It tells you the concept and you have to remember the term. Or you can read it the other way. You see the term, so you remember, you can say, oh, it means, if I hear this, it means this. So, and then you flip it, it tells you if that's the case. Because I would say more than 70% of the answer is knowing the knowledge item. What is it? Knowing it and knowing, where do I apply such a thing? Where? And that's part of how we learn in our learning journey, how you learn how to apply these concepts in the workplace. All right. So this is the Morgan portion. In the next 5 minutes, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions related to the certification and any specific details, how it can help you. If you can send in the chat, it would be amazing, or you can send in the Q&A. The next, we're going to go deep dive into a beautiful topic, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very dear topic to my heart, because I do believe that the science still needs to mature in order for us as an HR professionals to contribute towards the diversity of thought, the idea of how do we to have an open working environment and how to make sure that we have a growth mindset in the working environment. So I know some of you are using the raise hand because of the high number of participants. If possible, you can either send your questions in the chat or the Q&A. So I have a question: how many sessions there will be prior to the exam? I don't know if Morgan, you can help me with the total number of sessions. I don't have the exact. I can count them, or we'll wait. Maybe Morgan can help me with the exact total number of sessions. I didn't remember. So it's each module is probably around 5 or 6. 6 multiplied by 3. It's probably more. I don't know. I would say I would wait for Morgan, because I know each topic will get a lecture almost. For the competencies, we get to have 2 in the lecture. So. And then you can reach to the Morgan team. By the way, you can send out an email to the Morgan team. They will tell you how many sessions we have, or anything related to the pricing and the hours. Yeah, I know you're asking about the sessions and the hours of the program. If you can just reach out to Morgan, and then they will let you know. But all what I know, at least from me, from myself as a trainer, for every topic, like let me go back. I'll show you this so you give you an idea. From a training perspective, you see this body of applied skills and knowledge, because this is all the material that's covered in the exam. within people, for example, there are 6 topics. So there would be 6 or 5, I forgot, because I think they combine. So it'll be 5 lectures, 5 3-hour lectures related, for example, to people. For workplace, if there are 4 topics, there'll be, for example, 4 3-hour lectures related to workplace. And the same thing for organization. For the competencies, it's probably, I think there are 4 or 5 lectures, or 4 or 5 for the competency module, where we cover all the competencies. These are like my favorite. Okay, I have more questions. We have a question about this is related to the SHRM-CP and SCP. If you have questions about the CFA exam, you can send to Morgan and they will answer you. Can you register? We have a question. Can we register any time of the year? There are certain windows for the lectures, but usually I think the break is only somewhere in the summer. There's a break because there's a fall and there's a spring, and we follow the exam window for SHRM. And there's a 2 months exam window for SHRM in the fall and 2 months exam window in the spring. And the lectures will be prior to that to prep you, and there'll be a time where you can have that. So I do have another questions. Are there, if you are employed than us in the organization and they have high powers through the owners of the company? So I do have a workplace situation. So I'll answer the workplace situation throughout. I'll read it while I'm doing the lecture. I'll answer that. I'll make sure to give you an answer while I'm doing that. And so let's try to get into our topic so we get to enjoy. Keep sending your questions, by the way. I will answer if for any specific questions related to the certificate. I will make sure to get you an answer. But let me start the other presentation so we get to deep dive and we be mindful of everybody's time. So, all right. So we do have that. Give me 1 second. There we go. Got this. So let's start. This will give you an idea of the SHRM curriculum. There's some added slides here that we've added about the topic. And so just give me 1 second to answer one last question before we get in. Someone is asking about advanced certification. When we say advanced certification, we have SHRM-CP and SHRM-SCP, Senior Certified Professional. So the Senior Certified Professional, you can, if you want, you can decide to take the SHRM-CP first if you don't have enough experience in the HR. Then you can advance and take the next level exam, which is the SHRM-SCP. The certificate will come from Society of Human Resources Management, where I think the headquarters is in the US, Morgan, and it's certified from SHRM, the SHRM, as well as from Morgan as the center that you've attended all the classes, but you take the exam to get the actual certification with SHRM. All right, so let's get started. For any additional questions, I'll answer them at the end. Let's get started with our topic, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're going to talk about the inclusion paradigm and how much diversity and inclusion is a key to organization performance. A lot of organizations are realizing how important this topic is for their competitive advantage, and how much we understand our customer and the communities we are operating in, or the target market. Our workforce would reflect as well that diversity and inclusion dynamic that exists in our markets in order to understand better our customer. So what we will cover today: why diversity and inclusion? Why is it important? What does it give us as an advantage? The difference between equity and equality. What are the different diversity dimensions we need to think about? Unconscious bias, very crucial topic in the workplace right now that's happening around the world. As I told you, I'm privileged that I'm working with several countries across the world globally, and this is a topic that is on the table everywhere, is how do we overcome our own biases, our how do we realize our unconscious bias, and what do we do about it? What are the different solutions to unconscious bias that we can undertake on ourselves as HR professionals in order to have more impact in our organizations? What do we mean by the phenomena of covering? I love this because I studied, do you see the screen? Does everybody see my screen or not? I'm getting a question that there's, just one second, I'm going to reshare just to make sure that everybody can see my screen. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure people are just, I'm getting so let me share the whole screen just in case there's an issue with the sharing. So do you see my screen right now? Does everybody see my screen? Okay, perfect. Perfect. So I'll go to this. You see my screen. Excellent. So let's carry on. So let's talk about the phenomena of covering. The phenomena of covering, it is such a powerful concept. I remember, I can't give out my age, but I remember many years ago, over 20 years ago, when I moved from the Middle East to the United States and where I studied, and I moved from the East to the West. So, and I was still a teenager, and I didn't know, because I'm going to a place that's unfamiliar. People are like, they're not what I'm used to. They're not my homogenous community that I grew up with. I came from school. I know everybody in the school. We all kind of think in the same way, behave in the same way. And then when I moved, I felt I had to assimilate. And today we're going to talk about the difference between the word assimilation and integration. If you have advanced into diversity and inclusion, you would move away from the word assimilation to something called integration. I remember I felt like as a student, I need to assimilate. I need to change the way I look. I need to change how I'm behaving. I need to act differently. I need to speak differently so I can be similar. I can assimilate in that society that I'm going into. But what happens when you cover your identity and you cover who you are, you lose an edge. You lose you in the process. And when you lose yourself and you lose who you are and what you're proud of and what you grew up with, and that's when you feel that you cannot contribute. You get lost. And that's what we need to really be aware of as HR professionals about our employees, that we want the best value from our employees. I do not want anyone to feel they have to fit in with the group. No, you represent your own point of view. So we'll talk about that beautiful concept for you to start thinking about. Am I doing that as an HR professional in my organization? Or am I busy with HR transactions and just trying to tick the box? Check, check, check. Oh, did I recruit women? Check, yes. Did I make sure I'm doing this? Check, yes. That's not enough. That's not enough. Am I just doing focusing on certain diversity dimensions that I want to encourage multi-generational workforce? Tick, yes. But did you think beyond, which we'll talk about right now? How do we promote an inclusive culture and value people's diversity dimensions? And lastly, what are the system changes? When I talk about system changes, the true changes in our process that we want to make and in our reporting in order to be able to influence the organizational inclusion. And that's our job as HR professionals, to make sure that we're raising that awareness. All right. So let's talk about the context and the challenge. I want to just start this topic by talking about two dynamics that we see quite often. And I opted to choose to talk about the socioeconomic diversity dimension, a dilemma. I don't know if you're familiar what that means. In many of the Eastern societies, there's a lot of history and background of the social status, economical status of the individual, which family name you come from. You all understand, if anybody is operating in society, is handling an HR organization in societies that values us. This is a socioeconomic diversity dilemma. Is how are we as HR professionals recognizing this dilemma, and what are we doing about it? Are we doing anything? If you're recruiting people from the capital city, or are you including the people from the underprivileged cities, the remote areas in the country or not? Is everybody provided that support similar to the people who are living in the capital city, who have access to the corporations, who are closer or not? What are we doing as HR professionals to reach to those communities? Are we doing anything or not? Or are we judging? Or are we judgmental as an organization? Very, very interesting. And I'm starting to get a lot of comments. I'm going to try to read the comments as much as I can. Please feel free to send the comments. I do have a comment. Race origins that feed the unconscious biases, for sure. Lovely, amazing, for sure. It feeds on the unconscious bias because we love it. We love patterns as human beings. We love categorizing things. We love putting things into buckets. That's what we love. And we love talking about us versus them. But as HR professionals, we need to rise above this. And that's what education and learning does for you. The more you learn, the more you read, the more you can view the picture in a more holistic way, the more you can approach this topic differently and more impactful to include everybody. The gender equality situation. You're all familiar with what we call the glass ceiling. Does everybody know what a glass ceiling is? Especially in the gender context. It could exist in other contexts as well, but the gender context around the world, East or West, I'm seeing it everywhere. The number of female executives is very low. And why? Because there's a glass ceiling. There's some sort of a glass ceiling. It just stops. Like you feel there's a ceiling, there's a border somewhere, but you don't see it. It's not seen, but it is there. And it's based on stereotypes. Thank you. Thank you for the participation. It's based on stereotypes as well. There's a lot of stereotypes. Oh, you're a female, you need to go care for your house. Look at the body language that I said this. The body language that I said this automatically makes the female feels they're lesser in the workplace, not in the life. In the workplace. However, there's another way. Oh, we do offer daycare options. We do not hold meetings after certain times because we want to be mindful of parents, female or male, doesn't matter, of parents who would go and care for dependents. That's an inclusive culture rather than the other culture that talks in a very condescending way to help to always put a pressure down on the individual. So I do have another comment. Viewing the big picture is the most important thing, for sure. And the more you learn, the more you can understand how to view a bigger picture and you think holistically. As an HR professional, and as you take the certifications and you keep reading the advanced science, your brain becomes more holistic. You start developing certain type of maturity in your knowledge and in your judgment over things, because you've read where the world is going. These are workplace issues that happen everywhere. So let's talk about equality versus equity. Very, very powerful. The picture tells it all. Look at this picture. Look at this picture very closely. So I'll give you an example so you understand. We want to promote equity more than equality. Not necessarily that equality is a bad thing. No, equality is a good thing, but it's the start. Equity is the second layer, the second level of inclusion. Second level, that's a higher level of inclusion. What does that mean? If I'm short, okay. And there's something hanging that I need to get to. There's an apple hanging, I need to get to it, or a carrot, or whatever you want to call it. A promotion, that's a position. But I was born short. This is how I got educated. I didn't get educated in private schools. By the way, I'm a graduate of public schools. I'm not a graduate of private schools. I never took English. 1 hour of English I remember we start from the 5th grade, 1 hour of English. I never did. But what I did, I taught myself. I put so much effort to ensure that I'm teaching myself. But what we can do as HR professionals, some people, they can try to teach themselves, maybe they don't have the financial means to go and actually take extra courses and teach themselves those languages just because they grew up in an underprivileged society. So what we want to do for the people who are not, I'm short, we want to give them those steps. Look at these steps. Give them the steps to help them reach so they can be equally in a fair way. There's fairness to reach to that promotion. Same example as we do not hold meetings after 5 p.m. That's equity. Because if I am an organization, I'm going to say, oh, everybody's equal under the law. I want everybody to be attending those evening courses. If somebody doesn't have obligations, doesn't have dependents, or doesn't have other like obligations they have to attend to, they can attend those meetings. But the people who have obligations, because either they have to care for their parents, because we're the sandwich generation, or their kids, they can't attend. So they're at a disadvantage, and all of a sudden they're being judged that they don't work much. That's not an inclusive culture. That's not equity. Although the organization may be coming, oh, this position is equally available for everybody. No, it's not. It's not if you don't have the right support system for anybody who can be at a disadvantage. See how powerful the concept of equity. We teach this in our lectures, in SHRM lectures. Amazing concept. We get to talk about many examples of how to really help raise the level of equity in your organization. Let's talk about inclusion. Now I can give you a summary. In the next slide, we have a summary. Basically, diversity is who do we bring? That's diversity. Let's talk about our metrics and demographics. I have 30% X generation X, 20% generation Y. I've got 30% from out of, let's call them the different provinces, and 70% from the capital. This is usually what most of the companies have, from the capital city who live close. And I have 40% females, but that's not enough. And 60 or 50, 60% females and 40% males. That's not enough. That's at all not enough just to count numbers of who is in our organization. What we want to do is to examine the extent as an organization which we are making everyone. When I say everyone, I don't like to label groups. I'm a person, I'm against labeling groups. Everyone feels welcomed and feels supported and feels valued, regardless who they are, regardless of where they come from. And everyone would need to be welcomed and supported and valued. And you're going to see right now the different tools that SHRM is suggesting for us that we can do in order to make everyone feel welcome and supported. Happens only when organizational culture recognizes and appreciates talents, skills, and perspectives of everyone. The main idea of inclusion is to encourage people to contribute with their thoughts, with their true self. That's the idea of inclusion. So let's have more core understanding. Let's read a little bit of certain sayings about diversity. So diversity, Dr. Roosevelt Thomas Jr., is all the ways in which we are similar and all the ways in which we differ. I love it. Inclusion is leveraging the diversity in our workforce to achieve full participation and optimum performance. It empowers differences rather than suppressing them. It empowers. It empowers me to speak my mind. For example, I'm privileged to be part of executive board of directors in certain in companies that I work in. I'm the only female. In the meeting, my perspective usually is a little bit different than what everybody else. But I'm privileged that everybody appreciates, and actually they wait and they ask me for my perspective because I'm approaching it from what I've been experiencing in my world, what I've been experiencing in my experiences with my family, with my friends, with my life, how I approach things. And it's not necessarily similar to everybody, but it is appreciated. So I'm never feeling that I can't say my mind. And that's what inclusion is. That's what inclusion it embraces. So let's talk about the dynamics and inclusive workplace characteristics. If you're going to look at your workplace, and this is where I want you to remove yourself from transactional HR. Transactional HR is never the solution. Think of HR. We provide solutions holistically across the organization. We want our workforce to be multi-generational. We want our workplace to be multicultural. We want our workplace to be multilingual. We want our workplaces to be multi-talented and also multi-gendered. Unbelievable. These are powerful, powerful concepts, how you would approach diversity and inclusion and look at it in your organizations. Let's go further. Let me give you a historical perspective. I'll give you a historical perspectives. Where all this came from, it came from human rights, the human rights codes. Because human rights codes across the world, what is it telling us? It tells us every individual, whatever you belong to, you have a basic rights, basic freedoms. There are important principles of dignity, fairness, respect, equality. Your human rights are protected by the law. And if you read, like I've read labor laws, or what we call them employment standards, employment codes in several countries, you'd be surprised they're all the same. They're all very similar. Why? Because they're all coming from human rights, and they all have advanced historically. I thought to include here for you just a historical perspective, a world perspective. In the US, I remember when I studied at the university, like somewhere I was here, like I don't want to disclose my age. I was somewhere here when assimilation at the very beginning as a melting pot, it was like, everybody, we want to be a melting pot, and we kind of melt and we come up with a new culture. Then as diversity, inclusion discussions started coming up more and more and more, and affirmative action and equal opportunity, there was more talk about, no, come on, let's talk about multiculturalism. We can't just ignore the cultural backgrounds that people bring in. That's what makes our community great. Why are we trying to be a melting pot and get everybody in to be the same? No, let's celebrate different cultural backgrounds. And I know, for example, in Canada, it's very much celebrated, very much. You're always proud where your cultural heritage is from and what about your culture and where you come from. And you're always encouraged to be actually talking about that more. And that's inclusion. And then as behavioral sciences and as the conversation matured in the 2000s onward, it wasn't enough just to have conversations about diversity and inclusion. There were system changes and process and performance improvements needed to ensure that inclusion is embedded in the organization. And you'll start seeing, and this is what you get to learn in the curriculum, you start seeing how diverse you can address diversity of thought. How can you bring the best out of people? And we'll talk about them as we go. And let's explore a different concept as well here. Each one of us has several layers, several layers inside. There's external dimensions, the way I look, the way my color, the gender, the language. These are things that you can see. But these constitute, like that image, the tip of the iceberg, very, very small percentage of who you are as an individual. It's the internal dimension in your personality is what shapes you as an organization, what makes you who you are as a person, what makes you who you are, what really brings out the value from diversity element or dimension that you're bringing. And these layers, you as an HR professional, you're going to need to be aware of them. The organizational dimension, by the way, changes things as well. Where am I in the organization in my career, whether I've been exposed to executive level or I'm still at an admin level or at a specialist level, I'm in a managerial role, it changes the way I'm viewing things. I'm pretty sure you all have experienced it where sometimes you have a specialist or a supervisor who became a manager. And once they became a manager and they started viewing things differently, they start acting different. Are you the same person? No, it's because they saw the whole picture. They didn't see it before. They were very limited in their thought. Once they saw the whole picture, their behaviors changed. And now their actions changed. We talked about covering. The phenomena of covering. It happens when there is diversity without inclusion. If there is no inclusion, people learn to cover. They cover their appearance. They don't celebrate how they look. They cover their appearance, especially if there's a religious certain way they need to be dressed or they need to look like. They start to cover their appearance. They start to cover their affiliation with people that are similar to them. They start to not to advocate. So what happens? This puts you in a shell as an individual, and you don't speak up your mind. You're no longer saying what's in your mind. You're no longer saying your true opinion about things, and you lose as an organization the edge from that diversity element, because that diversity element that I bring, I represent a customer. I told you, we represent a community, we represent a customer. So if I don't bring up all these elements and the questions that I have and the value, the recommendations into my organization will not benefit from me. I hope yours, any questions you have, let me know until this point. We'll move to unconscious bias. It's one of my favorite topics in the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion, because the more and more you get to explore your unconscious bias as an executive, as a professional, the more you're gonna advance as an individual, the more you kind of rise up to levels that are higher, because every one of us, by the way, every one of us has unconscious bias, regardless. Each one of us has a mental model that they grew up with, and it's coming from what you heard when you were young, what you were raised based on. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with how we were raised. And we don't want anyone to be feeling, oh, because I was raised this way and I'm different than everybody else, then I can't speak up my mind. No, there's nothing wrong. But what you need to do, you need to identify, in this area, I do have some sort of an unconscious bias. I'm looking at another person that's acting different than what I'm used to, and I'm judging. You'd have to learn, what is it? Once you know, so here there are steps, or actually forms of bias, we'll talk about it, but I'll come back to it. There are 9 steps how you can deal with this unconscious bias as an individual from a self-awareness. First, the first step, which is the most important thing, is recognizing that I do, accepting the fact that I do have a bias. And it's fine. All of us have biases. Everyone in the world, no one. If anybody tells you I don't have a bias, don't believe them. Identify what your biases are. Face yourself. Say, let me identify, what are they? And I'm not telling you to question yourself, am I right or wrong? There's no right or wrong. No labeling. Don't do labeling. There's no labeling. Explore the significance and unconscious effect of these early messages in your mind. Decide which biases you will address first. And of course, remember, when they tell you, when you join an organization, you want to make sure the organization value system matches your value system, because you want to be comfortable. You want to be your true self. You don't want an organization that suppresses who you are, regardless of what direction they're going with. Identify certain programs that will help address these unconscious biases. Then lead by an example. Don't be scared. Lead by an example. Show people that you're recognizing this and you're working on it. And there's nothing better than being honest. There's nothing better than being genuine and honest. And consider facts in a different light and test alternatives, trying to figure out, how do I solve this? It's not easy. Check your culture for what behaviors it rewards, and then increase the diversity of teams, meetings, promote thoughtful decision-making. That will help. That will help make people more comfortable in their surroundings and try to overcome. Think of yourself. I'll tell you an example. We teach them as well, the 4 T's: travel, training. Think of yourself before you travel to a certain country. Think of the first time you went to a country. Before you went, you had certain perception in your mind. Your unconscious bias was telling you, they, because you always like to do they, us, we do this and this and this, they do 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you visit them, the gap reduces. And that's what cross-functional team helps. That's what those meetings, the more meetings you do, help. And for me, like I consider travel and then living in a different country than your own, it's an experience that helps you overcome your unconscious bias, and it helps you present your culture in the best way possible. So SHRM would like us to look at the different forms of bias that can exist. There's so many different forms of biases: stereotypes, ageism, gender identity bias, social comparison bias, extroversion, introversion bias, neurodiversity bias, racism, including systemic racism. So many different biases that are out there: in-group, out-group bias, unbelievable, sexual orientation bias, affinity bias, microaggressions. These are topics, I'm not going to go into them in details, but these are topics that you can really educate yourself more and more into them in order to understand how do you approach them as an organization, as an HR organization. How do you ensure you are inclusive across all types of thoughts, in order not to go in what we call organizational unconscious? Because you can, as an organization, you can develop certain norms that you become a rigid culture, uninviting. You're not inviting different types of dynamic into your organization because you're including only certain groups into the decision making, including certain behaviors into advancing their careers. You have to be very careful, very, very, very careful as an organization not to get into the unconscious bias piece of that of any sort. So the question: are we ready as HR professionals to go the extra mile? Are we ready or not? So let's explore. What does it mean we go the extra mile? What does it mean for us? What does it mean we do what we call diversity management? In many organizations, they started having diversity, equity, and inclusion council. Or they have a department even. I don't know how big your organizations are. If your organizations are large enough, they would have had this initiative probably by now, because they would have advanced in their stages of how they've advanced in HR. What do we do? Where do we want to reach if we want to do diversity management? What does an inclusive model look like? We're just giving you tips, a few tips. We're talking about flattened organizations. So no hierarchies. A lot of organizations are going towards that. Empowered contributors, making sure everybody's empowered, so it's not one group overshadowing the other. Continual transparent communications, making sure the communication and the knowledge is empowering. Matrix management, to ensure that there's several managers who can overlook the contributor performance and ensure there are no biases. Innovation and creativity is rewarded. Divergent thinking, encouraging open-ended decision process and open-ended. So if you're going to evaluate kind of where the organizations are heading, the policies and procedures, they're no longer rigid. They're no longer one size fits all. There's no longer that. So that's gone. Because if you continue in the traditional model where one size fits all, my policy is my policy. My policies are written to the details of the details, and I'm following details, conditions. Your organization will be rigid, and it's not inclusive of everyone. Like I know a lot of organizations are implementing flexibility. I don't know about your organizations. We'll talk about right now different initiatives. Flexibility is a major one that organizations are implementing. Why? Because it can encompass several initiatives. You don't have to say work from home. You can say flexibility, because flexibility can be different things. We're flexible if somebody has to care for somebody who's ill. We're inclusive. We care as an organization. We're not going to say, oh, sorry, go apply 2-hour leave because you're taking your father or your mother to a doctor. That's so uninclusive as an organization. While you can say, oh, our policy has flexibility. You can do in lieu. You can work. You can choose a day during the same week where you can compensate those 2 hours that you do, because we support you as an organization. That's inclusive. When we say multi-generational, people who are on the, like in the older kind of at the end of their career versus the people who are at the beginning of their career, you want to be inclusive of their needs. Each has different needs, totally different needs than the other. So if your benefits are one size fits all, where is inclusion? So if I'm at the end of my career, my main interest is retirement. However, you're telling me your benefit is bonus system and cash and incentive.
doesn't mean anything to me. I want my retirement. That show me a benefit for my retirement fund. So if you're an organization like, nope, sorry, we only have that, you're not inclusive as an organization. See how our work as HR is very, very much intertwined in this. In every initiative that we do, we are the role models as leadership or HR, the role models of how we are showing the organization how open we are, how inclusive they are to their needs. So people, if they feel we are in our programs and in our policies, they'll speak up. They'll come and say, oh, I'm bothered by this policy that you have, so I'm thinking of leaving. Isn't that the best thing that we want? An employee coming in telling us, I'm thinking of leaving. However, if the employees, they feel unwelcomed, they're going to decide to leave without coming and telling you, because they do not feel that the organization is inclusive of their needs. In terms of other business process reengineering, what we can do, first and foremost, before we get into the business process, is leadership mindset. I do have a beautiful question, by the way. How would we prevent an inclusion and flexibility abuse in the workplace? It's this solution. You work on the leadership mindset. The whole idea is to walk the talk. So if I'm an organization that I'm saying, I empower contributors. What does that mean? I would have to hire leaders who are mature and have open mindset and can really encompass concepts like flexibility without going into abuse and favoritism. So you'd have to trust your leadership and give the empowerment and the decision-making to the leader, the direct manager. You'll have to give them empowerment, because that responsibility, the onus on the leader to be responsible for not abusing the flexibility policy, will force them into ensuring that they have open mind to new untested notions, consider alternatives, making sure they're inclusive of everybody's need, challenge assumption, reduce systemic bias. But if we say, oh, we are the HR, we're the guardians of this, we cannot. Like it, either we like it or not. I know we don't, but we cannot keep centralizing things. World is changing. The whole learning organization concept is about change management, is about flexibility, is about open-mindedness, is about change, is about engagement, is about learning, adaptability. We can't survive if we want to do, if we want to be thinking of things are gonna go out of our hands. So these are things that power and accountability must flow down. So we flip the pyramid, make sure that we have a lot of accountability. For business processes, making sure we design them to yield more than one solution. We use interdisciplinary teams and deconstruct silos. These are like different things that we can do. And we do. I like this one. Don't fear creative tension. Don't fear conflict. Conflict sometimes is a good thing. Conflict to bring up what people are thinking, are truly thinking, to avoid groupthink. We want to make sure that we avoid groupthink. Some of the main system changes we want to make as HR professionals for re-engineering our processes, mentors and coaches, making sure we do provide that support system. Remember that people who cannot reach to that position because of certain limitations, it's out of their control, we can give them those mentoring and coaching opportunities to help them, to help increase that equity. Continuous learning, flexible organization structure, transparent communications, work-life balance, very important, which flexibility comes under work-life balance, or actually above it. I like it. It's the general umbrella. Flexibility, matrix management to ensure that there are administrative management as well as functional managers, making sure there's a coach that will always help me in my development. The main one, of course, recruitment and selection processes to ensure that that's very much redesigned to ensure we're bringing in people with open mindsets, especially leaders recruiting, the main one. If your leadership, you recruit open mindsets leaders who they have a growth mindset. That's how I describe growth mindset leadership. That's all what you need. If you have that, That's how you can, all your processes will fall into place to ensure you have an inclusive workplace. And you wouldn't be fearing the abuse, or you wouldn't be fearing the exploitation of any policy or favoritism, because the leaders have a growth mindset. Performance management, making sure the performance management is very much addressing the biases that leaders may have when they're evaluating everybody's performance. Because a lot of us, we fall into, remember, what are the different biases we have at the performance management? The halo bias, the halo effect, what else? The similar to me bias. The last one, I forgot the name of it, but the last one in bias, because the last one I talked to, I built all my judgment on the other one. The halo effect, that's definitely, there's somebody who's overshadowing everybody else. We have to be very fair in our judgments. And that happens as you recruit leaders who've got growth mindsets. They will bring people who have growth mindset. And that's how inclusion and diversity will be leveraged to the most in your organization. Other solutions, let's talk about them. I know, like, the time, we've passed over the time. The like me bias, correct. For sure, like, those biases, we need to realize them. What are different workplace solutions? Caregiver options. I think this is one of the most powerful initiatives we can have, because a lot of our employees, they're at a disadvantage because they have to care for a dependent, and a dependent could be an elderly or a child. It's both. These are one of kind of some of the most obstacles I see that would really stand in some people's way of getting those positions and advancing. Workplace flexibility policies, very important. Paid leave options, because that shows inclusiveness. When you say, as an organization, I do give you 3 paid sick days or whatever. I do give paid, I know, like, which country, I forgot the country, paid caregiver, like, if you care for a dependent, you have certain days you can claim them paid. Tuition reimbursement program for people who want to pursue further education because they didn't have the privilege. They were from the socioeconomic dilemma. They didn't have the privilege. So these are important. Student loan assistance, inclusive events webinar. These are like so many. Lactation rooms. Imagine how much you will make a mother feel, because in many countries, not like in Canada, they give the mom 1 year. Imagine 1 year paid leave. But I know when I worked in other countries, what is it? It's 2 months. So it's not enough. It's not enough. And they have 1 hour for the rest. It's not enough. Quiet or prayer room. This goes a long way if you give a quiet or prayer room, because people would say, oh, they do celebrate my religion. I am so happy. Like, you cannot imagine, when I go to Heathrow Airport, I'm very proud that they do have faith rooms in Heathrow Airport, because this gives an indicator for everyone. We value you. It's not we value, we know it means a lot to you. Very important. Braille and screen readers, closed captioning, wheelchair ramps, and the list goes on. Gender neutral restrooms. The list goes on and on and on. And these are little things in our hands. They're not large policies that it will cost us much. No, they're very little touches in order for us to show how inclusive we are as an organization and how much we care about everybody and we respect everyone. And I would end the webinar by saying most important thing out of everything is to ensure you have inclusive leadership. Very important, because hearts are the strongest when they beat in response to noble ideas. If you do not have inclusive leadership, if you don't have leaders who believe in this, if you don't have leaders who are humble, who do believe of the importance of every individual in the organization, who do value every individual in the organization, who have a shared vision, who empathize with everyone, who make sure that they don't have layering and I'm better than this and I'm here and here and here. That's where it starts. And once you get that, that's where you mobilize everyone, and that's you can get to the greatness as an organization. For you as an HR professional, that's how you would feel. You're very proud of what you are doing, and you're serving the mission and the passion where you joined the HR from the first place, is to make a difference in people's lives, is to make a difference in organization, not to check the box of we implemented that policy or we did this and this. It's not what's important. What's important is to make a change in somebody's life where they come in and tell you, oh, you made me a better individual. You were so respectful as an organization, as an HR professional, that I'm very grateful to what where you've gotten me where I am. So it's only when we see these things and we see the importance of our role as HR professionals in making a difference is when we can achieve those performance greatness. So I want to thank you, everyone, for listening in. And thank you for being with us. I tried to be like on time. Thank you very much. This is just an example of what we go through. It's like this is a half an hour, and similar to this, we go into details in a lot of these topics. We go into details, and we get to talk about examples and questions, and everybody starts asking, "Oh, I do like that in my organization. What do we do?" And we start exploring the different things as HR professionals. You cannot imagine how much we learn. Like I told you, I'm a student as much as I am an instructor every session, and we get to learn as we go, and we always never stop learning and never stop growing in our career. For any questions, we're here. We'll stick around, but that's it for our program. We'll stick around for another 5 minutes, and I would hope to see you all in our next program for our certification, and wish you all the best with your journey for your certification. And thank you very much. So I'll stick around for a couple of minutes. If you need anything, let me know. If you have a question or anything, let me know. Thank you. Thank you. I have a question. So I have a question. Organization believes that hiring outside the age range we currently have and being multi-generational would negatively affect the culture. What do you think about this, and how can I combat this? We'll have to explain, thank you very much, we'll have to explain to our organization that being multi-generational would add a lot of perspective. Everybody's perspective is very valuable, because seasoned individual, they can add a lot with their experience to aspiring leaders who want to grow and who want to go higher in the path. We actually had this conversation in one of my organizations, and because we were trying to implement like hyper programs and just hiring these aspiring young, and then we had conversations, said the young aspiring professionals, they need the seasoned, they need the people who've experienced how it was before technology, how they went through the journey, the things they experienced, and they will learn, they will see the progress and they will learn from them. But if you have everyone from one category, you're not going to benefit as much as an organization. So this is, I hope I answered your question. So, but this is how I would approach that. But for sure, multi-generational workforce would be for sure very important. I have a question. Which training institute is hosting SHRM professional certification in Bahrain? I think if you can send the question to SHRM, I wouldn't be able to answer that. I would say it's probably, I don't know, Morgan. I'm assuming Morgan would be the one, but I'm not sure. You probably need to ask them. I have another question that I didn't answer. I worked in a huge factory that has more than 12,000 workers and employees, and there are fewer employees than us in the organization structure, and they have high powers through the owners of the company directly. How will we deal with this situation? Wow, there are fewer employees. So so it looks like this organization is not flat. It's a hierarchical organization where certain people are occupying certain positions without qualifications or the skill levels. I would encourage first flattening this organization, increasing the number of leaders in that organization, this is kind of just a guess, and for me, like, I don't know the whole context behind this organization. Like, there's a lot of context, I'm pretty sure, but I would kind of recommend increasing number of leaders. So this, you can introduce leaders with growth mindsets. The more, I wouldn't approach the situation head on, because it's not going to pass most probably to make such a big change if it's been like this for a long time. But I would introduce a layer of middle management where the leadership are open mindsets with the growth mindset, and they can start enacting that change in this organization slowly, and hoping that you can get to one day where the power dynamic and is equally distributed in the organization, and the empowerment is across all levels. So it's not with certain groups, to avoid the biases and the favoritism and the uninclusive workplace. That's how I would do that. All right, so I want to thank you, everyone. I'm going to probably end the webinar at this point. So thank you very much, and wish you best of luck with your journey, and hope to see you soon in our next, in our future sessions. Thank you. Thank you very much.